Hey everybody, my name is John and I'm from the Fairmount Heights Branch of Prince George's County Memorial Library System. In our branch, we have what's called the Dream Lab, and it is a digital media lab where we have all sorts of equipment from audio interfaces, mixing boards, sketch pads, cameras, different types of modeling tools. We have the entire Adobe suite, Comic Life, and a bunch of other programs on our computers, and we have the hardware to boot. We also offer instruction on how to use these things and different times for people to come in and experiment or learn the equipment on their own. We also have online services like Lynda, for example, on the PGCMLS website, where you can access using your library card, which is free. And you can find more info about that at www.pgcmls.info. But let's get into this. I recorded this more than once, and I actually ended up mixing the entire song that we were going to use as an example already. So I'm going to show you the finished track, and we're going to work backwards. I'm going to show you what went into it in the interest of time. Again, this was recorded on a phone using a beat that I made a few days back. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to my finished mix, and again, this was recorded off of a cell phone by our staff member Kanisha. Thank you very much, Kanisha. She recorded the verse and the ad-libs, and then I did the mix, and we're going to listen to how it sounds and then what went into it and why I did what I did. Alright. Let me turn the metronome on.
No, I ball, stack it till we fall. This is only the beginning. I'm a rebel. Revolution, that's coming. Word to the motherland. This land was built up for bats and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking back, shaking back. We need a steady hand. Just trying to understand. Thoughts in my mind. It's an entanglement. Drifting the water. Wish I was well. Cry me a river like 10 seconds spilled. But diamonds.
Change the sound setting in between the recording. So my output is a lot different now. So I have to tweak it. But essentially, we have a few effects going on. We have the radio effect on the ad-libs. We have a lot of echo on the ad-libs. You have a real thick, full-sounding verse with a little bit of echo and reverb behind that. And then the beat is compressed a little bit so that you don't really get the whole song taken over by just the beat. So what went into this? Well, the first thing that I did, and I encourage you guys to do, is take each recording, and again, in FL Studio you can drag and drop recordings in. So if you open up a folder, you drag things from the folder onto the FL icon, and then from there it'll open FL and you can drag it onto the playlist screen like you would in Logic or GarageBand. But yeah, so I put all my tracks here, the beat, the verse, the ad-libs. I made the beat track 1, and you do this by clicking on the number and dragging it up or down until you get what you want. So if you're on the channel rack screen, you do it here. If you double click the recording on the playlist or somewhere else where you can bring it up, you'll see it right here. Next thing that I did was, put the verse on number 5 and then the ad-libs on 9. And the reason I gave it space is because I didn't know what I was going to do next. I didn't know if I wanted special effects, if I wanted to boost the sound, if I wanted to make copies of the sound and run it through different things. But yeah, so the first thing that I did was clean up all the empty space. Now, for example, you're going to have let me just drag a copy of this down. You're going to have a lot of this going around. You see this empty space in the recording. And in that empty space, you're going to hear chatter, breathing. Chatter, breathing, buzz.
No, I ball.
So the first thing that I would do is cut that out. But before I even did that, actually, what I did was I went to the channel for the verse. I created an EQ. So I clicked here in one of the slots for that. And again, I'm not necessarily going to go over the overall layout of FL Studio because that's everywhere. This is the principles behind like mixing from home or doing a basic mix or something you could even record off a phone. So again, if you need the basics of FL Studio, I encourage you to go to ImageLine's website or YouTube because it's pretty easy to use, but I think it's so easy to use that I wouldn't need to go over it. But yeah, I put in an EQ and then I applied the preset 40 hertz and 18 kilohertz. And then I played this. Let's see. Oh, that's right. Let me go to this one. So I played it. Let me take some of this noise and hear it. And I noticed that a lot of the noise was on this side. So towards the left is your bass, towards the right is your treble. So a lot of the noise is over here.
No, I ball, stack.
You hear that? Wind noise, all this stuff. So I just took it over here.
No, I ball, stack it till we fall.
Until I get rid of most of that, all I did was took this part, dragged it to the right, and then I changed the curve right here. So you can listen, depending on how it looks. And again, there are better ways, much better ways to filter out noise. But this is the basics. This is just to get you going and just get something semi-clean sounding for just working off of stuff you might have laying around the house, or a phone recording on a beat. So you listen, and the EQ will actually show visually where all the sound is. If there's a lot of fuzz over here, you're going to see lights on this side. If there's a lot of fuzz here, it's going to be in the middle, etc. And you're tuning out that fuzz. You're listening for. This is before she even starts talking. This is all the background noise you're dealing with. Now you got that high pitched treble.
No, I ball, stack it till we fall. This is on.
And you get as much as you can. You can actually do a second EQ, and you can actually change the different frequencies and everything. But that's what we got for now. The second thing I did was I added an EQ. And I tuned out her voice. So she doesn't have a very deep voice, so I didn't have to tune out much bass. However, a lot of that background noise was on the bass side, so I moved it. And again, changed the curve around.
No, I ball, stack it till we fall. No, I ball, stack it till we fall.
So it thins it out a lot. It thins it out a lot. And again, for this side, I should probably take this down too because it was really high pitched. Again, the problem with this recording is there's so much noise. There's only so much you can do. At least with the basics, I could run it through Edison, which is the built-in noise filter, but that's advanced. That's another layer. Same thing with here. I listened again, so after I cut this, after I lowered this,
no, I ball.
This started to be louder. So again, I cut it, and then I made the curve sharp enough that it only cut this little area that I wanted. And that's what you want to keep doing. The treble on this side, again.
No, I ball, stack it till we fall. This is only the beginning.
So I cut some of that treble out. And let me mute the special effects. I don't know why I had that on there yet. But yeah, so the key with EQing is you take, for example, like...
No, I ball, stack it till we fall.
You recognize and listen out for the thickest parts of your sound, the parts that overtake everything else, and you start cutting and limiting those things. And You can sweep, like you can move these left and right. You can drag them around with the mouse. But the point is, what you're wanting to do is listen for the most offensive tones and taking them out. So next thing we do is compress. So there are going to be times where your audio is loud and where your audio is not loud. And they might be in the same recording. So one thing you can do to change that characteristic is compression. So you can minimize the difference in sound between the highs and between the, how should I put it, between the loud and soft. So for example, we have these real loud, nice recordings right here. And let me get rid of this again. Real loud, clear recordings. Well, clear for the most part. Again, it's coming from the microphone of a phone, so it's not the highest quality recording you can get. However, it's perfect for this because we're showing how to mix with whatever you have. You got to work with what you got. The threshold is when the compressor kicks in. When do you want, or at what volume do you want this sound to get compressed? What volume do we look out for? What volume can this not pass? The ratio is how much you compress it. So the higher the ratio, the more it's compressed, the more squished the audio becomes. And this quiets it down a lot in a lot of cases. The gain is what happens after the compressor. The attack is how soon the compressor kicks in relative to when the sound plays. So if I start screaming right now and it's at 4 milliseconds, you won't really hear the difference because right then, compressor starts kicking in. So for the threshold, you have to listen and mess with it. But first you set the ratio. So I always set the voice to around like high 3s or 4. And that compresses it just enough because any higher ratio, it'll sound really squished and soft and quiet. Any lower ratio, and then it's like, why? It's really loud. So I'm going to set it to 4. And we're just going to listen. Let me turn the limiter off too.
No.
Here.
Word to the motherland. This land was built off our backs and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking bad, shaking bad. We need a steady hand, just trying to understand. Thoughts in my mind, it's an entanglement, drifting the well.
You hear how quiet that got? Or how weak that got? So we're going to find a part where it's not that weak.
Word to the motherland. This land was built off our backs and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking bad, shaking bad. We need a steady hand, just trying to understand. Thoughts in my mind, it's an entanglement, drifting the well. I wish I was well. Cry me a river like tis I get spilled.
So you can hear if it weren't compressed, she'd clearly be getting louder. So what we achieved is we flattened everything. We made it so it's all the same loudness, or that it doesn't really pass that loudness. And now all we got to do.
Word to the motherland. This land was built off our backs and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking bad, shaking bad. We need a steady hand, just trying to...
And put that gain up until it's loud enough for you. So now we got to unmute the beat because we want to hear how it sounds with the beat. And then you put that gain up.
Word to the motherland. This land was built off our backs and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking bad, shaking bad. We need a steady hand, just trying to understand. Thoughts in my mind, it's an entanglement, drifting the well. I wish I was well. Cry me a river like tis I get spilled. My diamonds like water, just for my leisure. No, I do not pledge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check, get it right back. I'm on a mission, got problems to solve. Say you won't make it with a rap a ball. Now look who wants our cash and knock how I ball. Tell my accountant to count me in, adding the numbers.
Yeah, so again, we're just going to be listening. So you up that threshold if it's too weak, and then you up that gain if you want to see what it sounds like when you boost. So be careful about the gain, because when you boost the volume of anything, you boost the volume of everything. So say you got a voice recording and you hear that your friend is in the background, you're gonna start hearing it because the overall volume is getting increased. It's like turning up the volume before the compressor. It's just louder it is, the more you can hear. So you play with it. Attack and release. Again, this is beginner. This is basic, so you don't really have to mess too much with it. I did it just for the sake of doing it. But this right here is subtle because by default it's set to like 15 milliseconds, and again, it's so tiny that like you wouldn't even notice. The release is just when it lets go, and again, it's so soon, it's so quick, so fast acting by default, you really wouldn't notice it. Also, in FL Studio there are presets. So there's the default preset, master, you got different things like brick wall. Some compressors will have like a voice preset, something like that, and you can tweak the threshold, but the point is there are only 6 knobs here. And these 3 are the ones that really matter, the top 3. You listen and you tweak. That's the most important thing, listen and tweak. And then limiter is for whatever the compressor does not catch. So
Run to the motherland. This land was built off of backs and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking bad, shaking bad. We need a steady hand, just trying to understand. Thoughts in my mind, it's an entanglement, drifting the well. I wish I was well.
So the point is, for the limiter, all it does is you set a ceiling. So this green line is the ceiling, and anything above the ceiling gets limited. That's it. It just cuts the volume. If it passes this volume, no. It just says no, and it takes it right back down at that very instant. So you set the ceiling, anything above it gets taken down, and then the gain is how much you boost it after everything gets, capped up in volume. So after the volume's capped up, you boost that flattened out sound. So again, EQ, so noise filter. So put a noise filter on. You can use the EQ because again, we're doing basics and we're not looking to make the overall most professional sound in 30 minutes or so. We're trying to get the best mix possible from a phone recording, a beat that was freshly made, and some ad-libs that were also recorded on the phone. So we're trying to get the best recording possible off the most basic, even almost, I'd even say like non-studio equipment, because your phone is not really studio equipment. So we're trying to get the best mix we can off the most basic, I'm not even going to say low quality, but off the least quality that we can in terms of recording quality. So noise filter, you can do it with a real noise filter, plug-in, or an EQ or something like that. So EQ for noise filter, then an actual EQ to clean up her voice and shape it how we want, take out what we don't want, put in what we do. Compressor to flatten it so that everything is uniform, and then a limiter. And then all we're going to do is we're going to right click on the track that we just did, file, save mixer track state as, and we're going to drag it and drop it on our ad-lib track. So I'm just dropping it here as an example because I already did it to the ad-lib track earlier. And then now that we make a copy, it's going to come out as a copy. So in order to change that copy, you right click that copy and you say copy of verse. Now what we're doing though is we're putting it on the ad-lib track. So this would actually be the ad-lib example, and FL lets you color code everything, so it's real nice, real colorful, boom. But we copied and pasted it here, and I renamed it ad-libs. So all that same stuff is right here, the same configuration. All the same voice settings are now on the ad-lib track, so her voice is cleaned up again on the ad-libs. And now all we got to do is put an effect on it. So what I like to do on the ad-libs is change that EQ, that second EQ. So remember, the first one is just for taking out noise, but the second EQ, I take this and I go to presets and pick like a cool effect, like radio. I love the radio voice. I'll show you what it sounds like.
Run to the motherland. And pounds of bloody.
Let me turn the special effects off.
Run to the motherland.
See that nice dry radio effect? Anyway, that's it. All the cleanup was there. We literally just changed the EQ around, or you can put it through distortion. You can use one of these things like Gross Beat or any plugin. So if you're using Logic, you can use different things. If you're using Pro Tools or anything else, you can play with it, but the principle is the same. Filter that noise, EQ, compress, limit. So we just finished our vocals, and now we're doing special effects. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and we're gonna send a piece of the sound to another channel, and in that channel we're gonna click in one of these empty slots, and then delay. We're gonna put a delay somewhere, and then reverb. We're gonna put a reverb somewhere. So all you do is you bring up the menu. Well, you click one of these and the menu comes up automatically. Sometimes it'll look like this. Sometimes it'll look like this, depending on your settings. Sometimes it'll look like this, how I like it. I like it nice, neat, and organized. But put a delay and then a reverb on there. I turn for the regular channel, and again, all you got to do to send. So say you had this channel, right? You want to send the audio. You would right click the arrow of the channel next to it, sidechain to this track, and you can sidechain all of it. You can send like 50%, so it's like 50% of the signal is going, yada yada. But that's what you do. So I normally send like, like 2/3, something like that, and get a nice strong signal, and then boom, effects. So now every time this plays, every time the ad-libs play, the special effects, the background special effects for that track will also play.
Word to the motherland. Word to the motherland.
So you hear that delay? So this is kind of loud, so I'm turning it down.
Word to the motherland.
And then with both of them on, I did the same thing for the verse. So the ad-libs have this echo. Now the verse has this echo, but the echo for the verse is much softer because you don't want it muddy. You don't want it to clog everything up. So listen.
Word to the motherland. This land was built up for backs and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking back, shaking back. We need a steady hand.
So I'm gonna turn the volume down for this. But the point is, now that you got these things in place, you can play with the volume for the special tracks. There's nothing special about this right now. You play with the volumes. The ad-lib's always going to be softer. You don't want your ad-libs louder than your verse. And honestly, that's all there is to it. And now that you got everything there, and let me mention, you can also compress the beat. So I have really aggressive beats. I make really aggressive beats. Aggressive bass, aggressive drums. You can apply the same thing, just a little compressor. Real small ratio, like 1.1. Take the threshold down, and maybe a little bit of gain, but take the threshold down and get it to kick in so that you just enough that it's still punchy, but you can hear those vocals real clear now. And then boom, up the gain a little bit if you think it's a little too mute, and then boom, that's it. Now you can play with the volume, knowing that these are nicely cleaned up tracks. You can just play with the volumes.
Word to the motherland. This land was built up for backs and palms of bloody hands. America's breaking back, shaking back. We need a steady hand. Just trying to understand. Thoughts in my mind. It's an entanglement. Drifting the water. I wish I was well. Cry me a river like tears I get spilled. My diamonds like water just for my leisure. No, I do not pledge up allegiance. Not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag. Spending a check. Get it right back. I'm on a mission. Got problems to solve. Say you won't make it with a rap a ball. Now look who won't talk. I should know how I ball. Tell my accountant to count me.
So the last thing is like physical edits. So the last thing to this is literally just going back and cutting all the empty space. So this is what the ad-lib track was like. All this empty space. Cut that out. Cut that out. Cut that out. Cut that out. Cut the spaces in between bars. Cut those out. Everything. Spaces between bars. That's where you find breathing, background noise, electrical interference, bzzz, all that stuff. That's in between those bars. See, yes, you can filter out and clean up the noise, but the even sweeter thing for, let's just say, like a beginner's mix or just something phone audio, just trying to get it sounding right for what it is. Take out the noise. Just take it out. All that empty space is nothing but noise. That's where the reference comes from. That empty space is what it sounds like, and that's what you're filtering out. So you just clean it up. You're not going to hear that noise. Oh, well, you might a little bit, but honestly, the average person combined with this really aggressive beat, you're not even going to hear the noise in the background. So once you apply those filters and that EQ, you're cleaning it up. So the best thing you can do is take out that noise in between so that you don't have to worry about it. When that verse kicks in, when these different recordings kick in, the beat is already there. The beat and that white noise blend. You're not going to have to worry about it if you take out these empty sections. So I did that. And another thing I did was, let's see. Yeah, let me read this. Okay, but yeah, another thing that I did was, these are also the copies I made, just for reference. These are like the originals, these are copies. But another thing that I did was I chopped everything up. So where she says, here,
We need a steady hand.
I cut off the word we, so. So where she says we, I cut it, and then I use this tool, boop. So let me just show you real quick. You can cut it. They draw the line and then draw another, and then that cuts it. And then in FL, you can take the select tool or the brush tool and you can click on something, right? And that automatically copies it. And now you can just paste. So I did that to we, and then cut the beat out and just deleted this piece right here, this little square, and then look.
Steady hands, America's breaking back, shaking back. We need a steady hand.
Where she says steady hand, I cut steady hand and made a copy, and then this little symbol right here, I clicked on it, make unique. So I made like a new copy of it, and I turned the pitch up for the chipmunk effect, and I turned the volume down so it doesn't overtake it. Little things, you just play with it, cut little boxes out, make copies, chop things up so you can, that makes that glitch effect, the wee, you know what I mean? And then you can do the same with the beat. You can take the beat and then
check, get it right back. I'm on a mission, got pushing, hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check, get it right back. I'm on a mission, got problems to solve. Say you won't make it with a rubber ball.
That's it. So again, listen, apply these effects, and just listen and just keep tweaking as you go. And then finally, when you think everything is good, you go to the master. You put that EQ down, and again, you're EQing the whole song now. So everything combined, let me take this EQ off.
Hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag,
That's actually pretty clean, to be honest. But that middle part,
hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check. Get hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check. Get it right back. I'm on a mission, got problems to solve. Say you won't make it with a rubber ball. Now look who wants to catch a knock a ball.
the middle part from 3 to 6, or from 3 to 5, that's where all that muddiness is going to come back, you know, once everything's mixed together. So I just cut a little bit of that out. The bass has already been taken care of. So on the left is always bass, right is treble. So on this side, I've kind of taken care of it. This side, I've taken care of most of it. And then I put an EQ under it. So EQ the whole song now. Put an EQ under it, where you just cut the sub bass and the treble. So again, this is the preset 40 and 18. If you're using Logic or GarageBand, there are going to be other presets for their EQs where, again, they have similar things going on where you can just cut a certain thing out. And again, the reason I'm using this one is because you're cutting pieces that you're not even going to be hearing, especially with all this bass and stuff in the beat. You're cutting out the sub bass. You're cutting out the stuff that just, this is the part of the bass that makes your chest boom, like when you hear a drummer live, or the part of the treble that's like ear piercing. It's not really a sound, it's a feeling. So your ears can only hear so much, your speakers can only play so much, your headphones can only play so much. It's your job to make it clear to hear and clear to your speakers and headphones. So that's why we're using this preset to cut this out. So EQ, then EQ to just cut the little stuff you can't hear. compress the song slightly. So I put it at 1.5, but I could put it like 1.4 or something.
Hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check.
High ratio, high compression.
Hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check. Get it right back. I'm on a mission, got problems to solve. Say you.
1.3 is still pretty loud.
Hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag.
I had it at 1.5, but again, listen. So for the whole song, you don't want a high ratio. You don't want something over the ones because everything's gonna feel muffled and muted. You want this punchy. This is hip hop. You know, there's a message. There's something to say. You set that threshold by listening.
Hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check. Get it right back. I'm on a mission, got problems to solve. Say you won't make it with a rubber ball.
Higher up the threshold, the more aggressive you're going to sound, and the less you're going to compress. The lower the threshold, the more you're going to compress, the less aggressive it sounds. And remember, you're compressing the whole song as one now. And then again, the gain, that just helps you make up for it. I normally say set the gain to 0 when you tweak it, and then go from there. But again, I just wanted to show you. You can play with the attack time as well. That'll help. And again, you compress the whole song, flatten it out so there's no big spikes, and then whatever gets past that compressor.
Hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Too busy chasing a bag, spending a check. Get it right back. I'm on a mission, got problems to solve. Say you won't make it with a rubber ball. Now look who on top, cashing out how I ball. Tell my accountant to count me in. Adding the numbers and breaking that dividend.
As you can hear, before that limiter, before I lower that threshold on the limiter, these little spikes, the S, the T sound, that it became ear piercing again. In that little split second, the compressor missed it. So what the limiter does is limits. It just straight up. You set what's called the ceiling, which is a threshold, and you say anything that gets louder than this gets cut or gets the volume lowered immediately. So compression, what it does is flattens everything. It squishes down the sound. The limiter will straight up just cut the volume. There's nothing deep to it. It's just, is the volume too high? Yes, turn the volume down. If it satisfies that condition, it just turns down. And that's it. So again, listen. EQ. Filter out your noise. Get rid of your extra noise. Cut unnecessary pieces out. Then compress your vocals. Limit them. And then once you feel like your main vocals are tuned well or mixed well, you cut out the unnecessary sound, the noise. You made their voice sound clear again, almost natural. Or really just cut out what you don't want. It could be unnatural. You might want to make them sound robotic. But however it is, you listen and you EQ it to get that effect at first. And once you get a clean vocal, then you can do whatever you want after. The compressor and limiter at the end literally just serve to make sure that everything is uniform and the same clarity. Once you get that little preset done, once you figure out what makes this voice tick, you can make a copy and you can move it over. And then all you got to do now, if everything was the same volume, all you would have to do is play with the volumes. So the verse is obviously going to be louder than the ad-libs. And since the verse is louder, the little background noise, the echo for the verse, is going to be a little louder than the echo for the background. So you just listen, you play with those volumes, and that's it. So listen, cut out anything unnecessary, cut out unnecessary noise, listen and tweak, and you should be able to make a basic mix from even something you recorded off your iPhone. So let me just play a little snippet.
Hedge of allegiance, not to a flag. Shaking bag, we need a steady hand. Just trying to understand. Thoughts in my mind, it's an entanglement. Drifting the water, I wish I was well. Crawling a river like tears I get spilled. My diamonds like water, just for my leisure.
Yeah. So that's a good start. These are the basics that you need to get a good mix, even off of something you recorded on your phone in a noisy room, like right next to a vent. It doesn't matter. Filter out that noise, EQ the voice or voices, because different voices, there might be more than one voice. You might have to do the process over and over, but filter out the noise, EQ, compress, limit, and then play with the volumes, compress, limit for the beat, whatever you need to do. Make that combination and be lazy if you got to. If you got 3 copies of the same voice, just copy your settings. Okay, once again, that's the end of Mixing Essentials. More information on the Dreamlab can be found at www.pgcmls.info. And also, more information on FL Studio can be found on ImageLine's website, image-line.com, and on Lynda, our online learning service sponsored by the library and available through our library cards. So thank you for listening. Good luck with your mix, and I hope you enjoyed.